Good morning, gardening friends. Today is Sunday, October 15th. It's beautiful outside. It's about 58 degrees. Sun hasn't yet come out. About 9 o'clock. A lot has happened this week, so I've got a lot to talk about. But I'm going to start with a sip of coffee. Oh, goodness. I did clean up my Sarracenia. This is Scarlet Bell. And I added to the family this week. I bought another Sarracenia. This one is just mixed, so it doesn't have a name. I found another pot that I had up in storage without a drain hole, and so I went ahead and potted it up in there. I like the fact this one may be one of the taller Sarracenias, but if you notice, it has sort of a hood versus this one sort of wraps over onto itself. This one isn't that efficient at catching bugs. Miss Mimi is outside. She has been getting awfully frisky in the cool weather. She's been jumping and running, and she's pretty much back to her normal self. This is angel trumpet time. Out here last night it was very fragrant. Oh, I think Miss Mimi wants to go in. It may be a little too cold for her. You want to go in? Go ahead. Go, 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 go. She's had her close-up for the day. And here's my Nepenthes. Hello. And it is doing really well. I cleaned some of the dead or tangled pictures off of it. Now, if I recall correctly, Nepenthes comes from Southeast Asia, versus the Sarracenias come from the New World, from North America. I potted up my first batch of paper whites. I don't keep them here, I just brought them out of the house. I keep them in the dark until they sprout. If you put them in bright light after you plant them, they tend to pop when the roots form, they tend to pop the bulbs out of the soil. So I put them in a dark spot under my kitchen pie safe. It's not terribly dark, but it's darker. And they'll sprout there. Looks like there may be a little green coming up right over there. I did these about 5 days ago. I fell in love with this pot. So I bought the pot. It's really for bonsai, but I wound up putting the paper whites in it. I thought it would be perfect for that. Roses are doing well. My lettuce I am harvesting. I have been having bacon, lettuce, and tomato sandwiches. Of course, I'm not going to go through a lot of lettuce because I put 2 leaves of lettuce and about 5 or 6 pieces of bacon and mayonnaise on the sandwich. So I don't go through a lot of lettuce. I heard that stuff's not too good for you. Of course, it might not be the lettuce. Here you see the teeny tiny Venus flytrap. I think I will bring that into my front porch for the winter. Oh, and I see my first bud here on my golden chalice vine. It is technically a vine, although I've pretty much got it bonsai'd here. In Florida, where it will last through the winter, it can grow, if planted in the ground, it can grow 5 or 6 feet per year. Although I've heard Florida is going to be colder than usual this winter. So we'll see what survives. Here you can see my Japanese toad lilies that I got from Walmart. And the dread oxalis must think it's spring because it came back. I hate oxalis. I've done a video on it earlier in the spring. However, the good thing about oxalis is it does die back for most of the year. So you really only see it in the spring. It looks like my ligularia, although it is moving backwards, well, it might have a sprout way at the bottom there. It was a tough year for ligularia. Well, let's go this way first. The other news is, ta-da! I got my knockout Sunny rose. It's a yellow, and ordered it through the internet, and it came from, what was the name of the place? Seed Ranch in Ocala, Florida. And actually the size that they gave me, it looks like it had 2 in the pot. I probably could have separated them, but as this one didn't look as good as that one, I figured now just plant them both together. I only have room for one anyway. So yay, I finally replaced the rose that I had been looking for. Here's what it looks like in bloom. Of course, this bloom is a little older, but it has a fantastic lemon scent when the blooms open. And really, for this small backyard, you can smell it probably about 10 or 15 feet away from the roses. They also have hips, if you don't cut the spent flowers off. I don't see any on there right now, but they have little orange to yellow hips that come up. This area was worked over. I yanked up one lantana, and these are the lantanas that I had in pots. I bought them, had them in the front yard and in the back yard on the deck. No, I had them, yeah, the deck of the garage. They were in hanging pots. They did not bloom at all summer long, and so I got tired of looking at green plants, so I stuck them in the ground, which they should live in this zone 8B. I do notice they're starting to get some buds on them. I had another type of lantana here, and it really liked it. In fact, it covered that whole area where the 2 are now. But the problem I had with it was really the color. The color was a violet, pinkish sort of color, and it kind of blended in with the wandering dude. And basically, you didn't see it. All you saw was green. And I had to find some place for the yellow, so I figured I'd plant them there. Also cut back the akaba quite severely, mainly because this one, for some reason, in the heat of the summer, a lot of it died back. And so I cut the dead off of that, and then cut this one down to match. Tried to leave the new growth tips untouched so that you don't really notice all the stubs. And of course, last week we replaced the hollies, and we did get rid of this holly, or cut it back quite severely, as you can see. I decided not to cut that one back. Really, you want to cut them in the fall. At least well, you can cut them any time of the year. The problem with this one right now is all of the new growth is going to be quite tender. And so I may have to cover it with some fleece when we get really cold weather. But on the flip side, even if the sprouts die back, it'll more than likely come back. These hollies, I used to have a row of them here, a hedge, were cut back. This will be the 3rd time for this one. Basically 3 times in the 30 years I've lived here. And I cut them all the way back to the roots, to the bottom, and they come back. There used to be 7 of them along the fence. And actually, here's the stub of one. Now this one, these hollies were cut back, I want to say, at least 7 or 8 years ago. And just cut them to the ground. I don't yank things out, especially when they're that big. They'd probably take my fence down. It's not the least bit rotten. So hollies must be an extremely tough wood. Now you can really see my snowball viburnum. It doubled in height this year. I don't know if you can see back here. We can actually get in here now. I tied it to the fence, mainly because I didn't have a stake tall enough. But it was getting a little floppy because it was leaning towards the sun. And this, we'll find another spot for this. This is a forsythia. I have other forsythias back here. This one is special because this was taken from cuttings. If you go back in my old videos, you can see in my front porch when I sold my property up in New York, I took some cuttings from my grandmother's forsythia bush. And so it's not a forsythia bush like she had, it's actually cuttings from the bush that she planted. And you can see here, these forsythias I bought, but they do okay here. They don't bloom as spectacularly as they do up north, but they still bloom. So a lot of work was done here this week. Let's see what else has been going on here. My datura is about 6 feet tall now. And this angel's trumpet could stand a staking because it has so many flowers on it that it is leaning towards the sun. And those of you that have followed me long enough may recall I used to have a loquat there. In fact, that's the stump underneath the ponytail palm there. I just cut it off flat and used it as a base for the ponytail palm. And of course, those of you that are new won't know that this grew by itself. It's either a pecan or a hickory nut, more than likely a pecan, because I've seen pecan nuts back here, I guess brought by the squirrels. But it is so close to where I wanted to plant something, I decided to just let it grow. And all of this is 1 year's growth. The nice thing about pecans is they have deep roots. You don't have to worry about the trees uprooting in high winds. However, you do have to worry about them splitting what grows above the ground. Blueberries have done okay. They were better until the angel's trumpet swallowed them up, but the angel's trumpet will die back in the first frost. I should mention it's been a while since I talked about these. These Serenoan rapans are cuttings from this big clump. And I took those cuttings the same time I took the cuttings at the corner of that bed. However, I did not like the fact that they were growing as tall as they were, so I cut them back for the first couple of years. And these are probably here now for 7 years or so. More than 5. And they're coming back every year, but they now stay short. Don't know how they do it, but they do it. So here's another one here. I have to clean it out a little bit. My lady palms, still doing fine. I did have a branch or a bit that I took off of my old lady palm that had been planted there, and it grew. I wouldn't say it rooted, but when I got the new lady palm, what I did is I took the old one up, and since it was still green, I tucked it in the back side of this palm. But it just had a single root that came off of the main root of it, I guess, where it used to go to the mother plant. But it didn't die, so it's a nice clump there. That's one of the few palms that will do well in the shade, although it's not totally hardy to this zone. You kind of want to plant it in a protected spot. And this one was moved around quite a few times until it finally found its spot underneath the pindo palm. And I did notice, and I'm letting it grow, that I guess the birds have planted up a fern up in the pindo palm. So I'm going to let it grow up there. This angel's trumpet is looking good. I didn't turn my fountains on yet. I've spent the morning making a meatloaf. It's cool enough today that I figured I'd fire up the oven and let the house smell of meatloaf. I have only 2 recipes for meatloaf. This is my mother's recipe. It basically has breadcrumbs, onions, carrots, and a little bit of Worcester sauce and an egg. And in any event, you fry the carrots and the onions and then make it all into a meatloaf. I usually like to let it set, so it's not in the oven yet. It's setting as a meatloaf to let all those flavors meld together. I can't wait to put it in the oven because I always get a kick out of watching these cooking shows about the newest and the latest flavors and what you can get. And it's like, yeah, give me the meatloaf my mom used to make. Whenever I smell it, it's kind of a warm hug from Mom. Here you can see my plumbago. Still doing well there. And the big news this week, ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. My original toad lilies are in bloom. And the good thing is they are different color than the ones from Walmart, which is what I wanted because I understood that there were different types of Japanese toad lily. These I got from a friend in Fairhope, Alabama. I tried to cut most of the dead out of the boxwoods. It looks like I left one branch over here. If it's boxwood blight, there's not too much you can do. But what I like to do is I usually like to let the whole branch die and then cut it off. I got some alyssum. Since the birds won't leave my sedum alone. This sedum, by the way, is not planted in dirt. It's growing on the surface of the hypertufa rock that's there. But I thought, what else could I plant in this pot that would last all winter long and stay small? And lo and behold, alyssum. Saw it for sale and got it. It does have a nice fragrance, although you really have to get down low to smell it. My Gara is doing well. You kind of have to have the right spot for this because it doesn't look like much of a plant. All you really see are the flowers. But it's pretty for what it is. I did go ahead and plant up these 2 pots with yellow pansies with the black blotches. My grandmother used to call them monkey faces. And did some other work inside. Let's go in here. Still have that siding to put out there. It'll happen this fall. But there you can see the poinsettia. I doubt if it's going to bloom again this Christmas because those are still the flowers that have been on there all year long. But I did take cuttings of my iachroma. I saw a YouTube video on it. I tried taking cuttings last year and put them in water and they died. And I saw a video on YouTube that said to take 4-inch cuttings. The roots come from the nodes. So you want to cut, leaving a node at the very bottom. Dipped it in rooting hormone and stuck it in that pot, and we'll see what happens. And also this, when I went to the nursery to buy some of the flowers, I saw a piece of this on the ground that was all wilted. People had stepped on it. I said, do you mind if I take that? And they looked at me like I was crazy and said, yes. I know you can have it. So I stuck it in that pot, and we'll see what happens. This garden is looking good. I've got all the same color pansies. I like these yellow with the maroonish black blotches. These are the last of the marigolds. You'll see shortly what I mean by that. And this plumbago I straightened up onto this pole, and it kind of has maybe about a week, 2 weeks ago, and it's kind of straightened up some and is taking to its new location. At least it hasn't died. This is the iachroma. This did not winter over in this spot. I bought a new one this year, and it's starting to bloom again. It is related to the angel's trumpet. They're not that weedy thing, but if I pull it, I'll rip the blossom off. But it's not all that spectacular, and I don't think I would buy it again. So what I did is I cut it back, and I took the cuttings, and as you saw, I'm going to try and root them. So if I can root it myself, I will keep it going. If not, I don't think I'll plant it there again. These are the only red pansies that I have. I got red because I have the red chrysanthemums here. My mandevilla has, at least for now, stopped blooming, but it has buds, so it will bloom some more. I still have a potato on my air potato. I only have one, and that's it. Let's go out to the front yard. Here you can see the satsumas are starting to turn orange here. This is a west-facing exposure. I'm not so sure my coleus are going to come back, but it looks like there are some sprouts. If not, I took plenty of cuttings in the house, so I will have those particular coleus for a long time. Here's where I put the other two lantana that were on the front porch. And I'm thinking I may need to fertilize or do something to that lower petalum because it's the same as this one. Planted the same time, but for some reason, that one has remained small. I only stepped on it once. It was a long time ago. Here's something I haven't talked about in a while. I've got 2 pots in the backyard. This is lavender. And, oh, it smells great. I don't know what kind of lavender it is. I'll let you see a close-up next to my hand, so if you see it in the stores or nurseries, you'll know that it does thrive. It does like it dry. So I have cloth underneath these stones. So what I did is I cut a hole in the cloth and planted it in the ground underneath. That weed suppressing cloth is a myth, as you can see from all the weeds that are growing on top of it. I put it down about 25 years ago. So it's good for the first 4 or 5 years, and then seeds will grow through the rocks. All of these ferns are growing on top of the rocks. They're creating their own soil. Here's some snapdragons that I had last week. You saw them in a flat. These were my extras. Of course, the rosemary, still doing well. It's got some flowers. I love brushing against that. That's one of the reasons, and it gives you a little bit of privacy sitting there in the little table and chairs. Although, to be truthful, I don't sit there much. It's mostly when I come in the front yard to do a little work. That's where the lantana was, and I opted for pumpkins. They'll be there hopefully through Thanksgiving if it doesn't get too hot and they rot. Didn't do much in there, no camellias in bloom yet. I did do a little bit of work here in my potager. You can see back there the ginger has got multiple sprouts on this end. And I don't know why, but for some reason, this has done really well here, but not so well over there. And I planted it all at the same time, kale. I did get some parsley. That's lemon balm. My lemon balm, I didn't do anything to it but plant it this year, and it doesn't look all that good. Of course, I still have basil. I still have my 4 o'clocks. Still have dill. This is my bee balm. Lantana is in bloom. I was going to say it's not edible. I was going to say most of the plants that I have in this potager are edible in some form or another, but then I stop myself because the butterfly bush is not. The wandering dude or spiderwort isn't really edible, but it can be used on wounds. 4 o'clocks are not edible. But it has a lot of edible things in there. Here's some more lettuces. There's my sage getting ready for Thanksgiving. Here is the progress on my borage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did have 5, and they're coming up. If they don't make it with frost, they can be eaten at any time. I could actually pinch them now and they'll taste like cucumber. But of course I won't have any plant if I do that. And I had parsley here last year, and it will last through till the heat of the summer. So I pretty much have everything planted in that's going to be planted in. And I did notice here is another ginger. This one didn't do as well as the other one. It's a little shadier here. And I reworked the front of this. The marigolds that were here just really didn't do well. Maybe if I started them from seed, but they were very fragile. Every time I would water them, I'd break branches, and I just had enough. And I thought, let's go ahead. I had luck last year with snapdragons, so I got the same red snapdragons. I fall into, what do you call it, patterns. I like the red snapdragons here. And of course, the yellow pansies, which along the edible theme, the flowers of snapdragons are edible, and every part of the pansy is edible. The flowers as well as the leaves. Of course, it doesn't really taste like much, but technically, it's edible. And I continued on over here on this side of the drive. So it was a busy week, a lot of things happening. Oh, I see here I have got to get those cats out front. A lot of damage from a mole. There's a lot of mole activity today. And my cassia is just full of buds. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, these buds are going to open. They're all overhead. As you can see, I'm walking under the bush. And looking forward to that. Hydrangea hasn't done anything major since last time, but it did bloom this year. Had some leftover pansies I stuck back in here. And this is the time I did thin back the wandering dude. I got it off of the monkey grass. And you can see the encore azaleas are starting to bloom. Well, they are still in bloom. They usually stay in bloom from Thanksgiving through to January, and then they'll put on a spectacular show in January. So I've been out in the yard a lot this week. A lot's been going on, and it's going to be cool this next week. So I plan on doing more work out here. Get the gardens in shape. I'm going to tackle the aspidistra last. I absolutely hate that. But it will need to be done. I did clean up all my bananas. And they do look spectacular once when you get all the yellow out of them. That's the one bad thing I hear a lot of people talk about. I want a white garden, only white things blooming. A white garden is really green and white. And I'll tell you what, when that green turns yellow or brown, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So an all-white garden is a maintenance headache because you need to cut off all the spent flowers and all the dead leaves. Otherwise, your eye is drawn to the yellow and brown rather than the white and the green. Just from experience, I've learned these little things. I try not to fight it. But this looks really good today. It's supposed to be down into the, well, it got into the 50s last night. I heard it's supposed to get down into the 40s in the next few nights. And that's about it for today. Let's end with the close-up of the butterfly bush. And I'll wish you all a good week. Take care. Until next Sunday.